a starving nation, a king who couldn't lead, and an idea so powerful it tore centuries of monarchy to pieces. What began as a fight for freedom spiraled into mass executions, political terror, and the birth of modern revolution. This is how France burned the old world to the ground and tried to build a new one in its place, a nation on the brink. For centuries, the French monarchy ruled with absolute authority. Kings lived in unimaginable luxury at Versailles, while most of the population struggled to survive. The vast majority of the people, the peasants, artisans, and bourgeoisie, carried the heaviest burdens, while the clergy and nobility enjoyed special privileges, including exemption from many taxes. By the late 1700s, this inequality had reached a breaking point. France was bankrupt. Decades of costly wars, including its crucial support for the American Revolution, had drained the treasury. The government was deep in debt, yet the tax burden fell almost entirely on the poorest, the Third Estate, while the elites paid little or nothing. At the same time, a new wave of ideas was sweeping across France. Enlightenment thinkers like Voltaire, Rousseau, and Montesquieu challenged the traditional divine right of kings. They argued for reason over superstition, equality before the law, and the idea that government should serve the people, not rule over them. The monarchy, bloated and out of touch, stood on a fault line. Pressure was building, and soon it would explode. The spark of revolution. In 1789, King Louis XVI called a meeting of the Estates General, a legislative body representing the three social classes, for the first time in over 170 years. He hoped it would calm the growing unrest. Instead, it sparked chaos. The Third Estate, the common people, realized they were consistently outvoted by the clergy and nobility, despite representing the vast majority of the population. In a bold move, they broke away and declared themselves the National Assembly, claiming to represent the true will of France. Days later, locked out of their meeting hall, they gathered in a nearby indoor tennis court and took the famous tennis court oath. They vowed not to disband until they had written a constitution for France. Then came the tipping point, July 14, 1789. A Parisian mob stormed the Bastille, a medieval fortress and prison that symbolized royal tyranny. Though it held only a handful of prisoners, its fall was explosive both symbolically and politically. The revolution had truly begun. In the countryside, peasants revolted. Nobles fled in fear. The old order was crumbling faster than anyone had imagined. Hope and terror. At first, the revolution seemed to fulfill its promise. The National Assembly abolished feudal privileges and issued the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, a groundbreaking document proclaiming freedom of speech, equality before the law, and the sovereignty of the people. But this hope was short-lived. France's enemies, foreign monarchies fearful of revolution's spread, and internal royalists longing for the old days, were closing in. Fear and paranoia gripped the nation. In 1793, King Louis XVI was put on trial for treason. Found guilty, he was executed by guillotine, the national razor. Months later, Queen Marie Antoinette suffered the same fate. The revolution grew more radical. Maximilien Robespierre emerged as the leader of the Committee of Public Safety. He launched the Reign of Terror, a brutal campaign to purge enemies of the revolution. Tens of thousands were arrested, many executed on flimsy accusations. Robespierre famously declared, "Virtue without terror is powerless." The revolution was devouring its own children, and fear ruled the land. The fall of Robespierre and the Directory. By 1794, Robespierre had become judge, jury, and executioner. But even his allies began to fear him. In July, he was arrested and guillotined, ironically by the very system he had controlled. What followed was chaos. The revolution failed to restore peace or stability. Power shifted from radicals to moderates, then to a corrupt five-man executive known as the Directory. France had passed through monarchy, constitutional monarchy, and republic, and yet inflation, war, and hunger still ravaged the nation. The ideals of 1789, liberty, equality, fraternity, felt distant, buried under years of bloodshed and fear. The people no longer trusted assemblies or revolutions. They yearned for order. The rise of Napoleon and the Revolution's legacy. In 1799, amid the political chaos and uncertainty following years of revolution, a brilliant young general named Napoleon Bonaparte seized power through a sudden coup. Promising stability, strong leadership, and renewed national pride, he dismantled the fragile republic that had struggled to govern France effectively. By 1804, Napoleon crowned himself Emperor of the French in a grand and carefully staged ceremony, making clear that the revolution had ended the old monarchy only to replace it with a new, centralized form of authoritarian rule. Despite this return to strongman rule, the French Revolution left a permanent mark on history. It ended the feudal system in France, abolishing centuries-old privileges and social hierarchies. It inspired revolutionary movements across Europe and the Americas, spreading ideas of freedom and equality to new lands and peoples. Most importantly, the revolution introduced the powerful notion that governments should exist to serve the people, not to dominate them. It challenged the old order and established principles that would influence politics and society for generations. The revolution didn't need to just rewrite France as constitution. It rewrote the way people around the world thought about power, rights, and justice. Its legacy remains a complex mix of hope and hardship, but its influence on modern democracy and human rights is undeniable.